guys, this is James Rage. I'm here with Urthboy for the Street Talk podcast. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Good to be chatting.
Thanks for your time today. We really appreciate it. You're a prominent hip hop MC in the Oz and New South Wales scene. It's been awesome to grow up in the Blue Mountains and for people to know who you are and how much your music has had an impact, especially where you're born and raised. As a MC, where did this kind of start for you? Where did this passion kind of grow? Where did the seed be planted?
For me, it goes back a bit further than when I guess a lot of young hip hop artists have even been born, or fans that are connected with the street uni. And it was back when I was in school, and at a time where there wasn't the internet and there wasn't a whole bunch of different internet communities that you can be synced with, whether it be like particular artists or just being across everything from the UK scene through to American scene, whatever is going on as far as the artists that you're appreciating. It was much more kind of scarce when I was coming up. So things were more led from record stores or from the odd show that covered the culture back then. So you'd really have to make a lot more effort to get involved in hip hop. And I don't know what actually, it's hard to kind of go back to that period of time and really fully understand what drew me to hip hop culture. But there was a lot about hip hop culture that just appealed to me because I just liked writing and I liked poetry. And when I say poetry, it wasn't really like I just like rhyming. I wasn't really fascinated by all of the aspects of poetry. It was more just rhyming words. So I think I gravitated to it that way. And graffiti culture felt connected, but it was partly because there wasn't a whole lot of hip hop fans, and a lot of the ones that were kind of, involved in I guess more street culture, whether that be vandalizing shit or whatever. Like they're the kind of people that I gravitated towards. And hip hop music exposed me to heaps of political content and heaps of issues around, Afrocentrism and like the Black experience that was so far removed from my experience, and made me think a lot more broadly about the world around me than I had ever been challenged by in my school. So hip hop kind of opened my eyes to heaps of stuff. And one of the first things that I did, because I was young, I didn't really understand what people like Chuck D and like Paris and these different staunch rappers, I didn't fully comprehend what it was all about, but it made me look at Australia, and it made me start looking at what's going on here that kind of has parallels. So I started wondering about what, I didn't know anything, and I'm not trying to proclaim that I knew a lot about it, but it started asking questions around the Indigenous experience and what the effect of colonialism had on this country. And it started a process. It got something going in me, and I just loved hip hop culture. I've never looked back. I've continued to love hip hop and love all of the way that it evolves and changes. And I always try to prevent my old kind of like back in the day instincts from ever taking over, because I always love the vibrancy and the energy of young artists who innovate and change things. And I always I want to be as fascinated by the hip hop that influenced me as I am these young artists that are coming through that I don't quite understand, but kids love it, and it means something to them, and they have relationships with these artists and the music that they make. So it's constantly changing. So I've been blessed to kind of have to even be able to participate in the hip hop culture here.
Now don't ever come around unannounced. Know if you announce, it's one too many runabouts, one too many counts, far too many dumb it down. I came here to do my job, not to hear you run around. I do okay, believe me, man, I ain't come to scrounge. Haven't come to pounce, I haven't come to cut you down. I don't want no gown, I'm not trying to hunt your crown. No 21 gun salute flags or trumpet sounds. I'm just running now, and yeah, it's summer now. It's warmer in the water, yet I sort of wonder how it's cold now. I see your thunderclouds, but you should keep it in a teacup and just shut your mouth. Simply cut it out, you're one number, I'm rubbing out. No number one or even 101, still you strut about. From middle to the mainstream and the underground. You're not in this struggle, so don't you ever come around.
How did hip hop kind of open your eyes to these human right abuses in Australia and the different political forces that you saw were happening before it was kind of stated?
I think it's really important to, you can come at like our shared human experience from different angles. You can come at it from a place of threat and hostility. There might be some way, I can't sort of embrace the great traditions and the great learnings that are available from First Nations culture, because that is inherently a threat to my white way of life. And there's some sort of threat to me by celebrating and honoring First Nations culture, right? You can kind of come at it from that angle of fear. And so therefore you're trying to parlay other people's fear of this other as like a way of unifying your own power, right? This is like how this is how the more sinister side of like humanity kind of takes over other members of humanity, right? So you can come at it from a place of fear, or you can come at it from a place of pride and a place of like, hang on, wait, we are invaders here in this country, right? We colonize this country. Even people who have come here as immigrants, we are all invaders in that kind of basic sense, right? So being able to kind of look at what has survived here for tens of thousands of years and look at the culture that has been created and the learnings of how they've managed the land and the cultures within all of the different nations here in Australia, and see the greatness of it and what it has to offer, you have that choice. You can kind of like just actually celebrate the greatness of it, or you can come at it and be fearful of it. And I think the colonial experience in Australia has always been governed, policies have been led by fear and by trying to create a sort of like a solidarity within, particularly white people here, right? I don't believe that. I think it's fucked. I think like ultimately, like when you're talking about acknowledging country and honoring First Nations people, you do that from a place of respect. You don't do it as a kind of like a formality or something. So getting back to what you're talking about, like with talking about that at gigs, I'm still learning how to do that. Like, there's a lot of, I hear a lot of people talking about, these are symbolic acts. And I guess symbolism and pragmatism and actual acts and actual gestures, actual concrete acts of compromise and sacrifice in order to kind of back up the symbolism is really necessary when kind of understanding how to kind of navigate your way on the land as like an outsider, as a person who's come from elsewhere. I think that they are really important for us to all kind of like get our priorities straight. So when it comes to like, well, your question about like human rights abuses and stuff, I don't really totally know how to answer that one, but I guess like it was pretty confusing as a kid looking at all these books and going, hey, this is the truth, this is the truth, here's the facts, the history, blah, blah. And then starting to kind of like open your ears and eyes to another story and going, hang on, what was that wrong? I think that we as a people here have every right to be furious at being lied to.
Just like New Year's Eve, we dance from sheer relief. Whoa, everything must change. The people that you project that are size were nothing of the sort. Sold us so short, put down the champagne, no toast to the legacy. And all the propaganda of prosperity, that's what a machine does, and they don't need therapy. You turn us into a nation of haters. Fire right at Pisa, believing whatever kept your leader. Dog whistle through the speakers, see who bites it. Noticed a hell of a lot of people like this. An ethical choice is simpler if you price it. Conquer by dividing, that's where you admired him. Unless pushed, we would never have retired him. Fucking pirate history will damn him. Once it seemed like nothing could damage him.
36计的为相册
Crook, you got your ass played in Mandarin.
Everything that we've been taught about this country is a mixture of like distortions of truth and you know, the history, the accounts have been written by white people. So if you have any kind of basic self-respect, you'd be angry at being lied to. Like, why would you want to be lied to? Like, we all talk about like wanting to have your own freedom and whatnot, but like at what point do we turn around and go, hang on, you know, we deserve to know the truth. Aboriginal people deserve the respect of having, you know, not having or genocide be watered down to just sort of be normalized and not be discussed. So I feel like a hip hop culture started opening a door for me that made me start asking questions that, look, I'm not perfect. I've continuously made mistakes. And I mean, you know, as a white person, I feel like one of the biggest things that you've got to fall, or like one of the biggest ways that happens when you actually try to open up your heart to question some of those stale, you know, versions of truth that you'd kind of settled on that actually are far off the mark. One of the biggest things that we've got to lose is just awkwardness, saying the wrong things, stumbling around words. But if that's the worst, or not even the worst, but if that's like one of the reasons why you kind of don't want to wade in or whatnot, fucking God, like, I don't mind being embarrassed. I don't mind kind of stumbling around as I'm trying to understand where I fit in the world, as you try and grasp what it really means when your ancestors have kind of stood on the necks of other people's ancestors, and the cumulative effect of that over generations. I mean, I want to grapple with that. I want this country to be a better country. I want justice in this country. So, you know, that is definitely, I mean, I wouldn't say it's just hip hop, but I think hip hop had a massive role in making me question the status quo. And I don't know, like a lot of the people that I've come to meet across my travels in hip hop have also just been able to shed light. Like, you know, you develop friendships with people, and, you know, that the people from outside of your own, you know, maybe the school that you went to or the community you grew up in. So these people, you know, you're always offered opportunities to learn and grow. Hip hop has been fundamental to that for me.
Well, that's beautiful. It seems that hip hop has been an avenue for free speech and free thinking, and has had the ability to question the status quo and the whitewashed history of Australia. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Talking about you as a very multi-talented artist, as a producer, an MC, and a co-founder of, I would say, Australia's most prominent independent record label. How do you juggle all this? How did you have so many fingers and so many pies and still achieve quality?
Well, with Elephant Tracks, I was around at the start. I wasn't really one of the co-founders, the ones who really started it off. I joined and I was in the periphery. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I think you always need to remember when you're not really, you know, part of a business, or you don't have a crew or whatnot. Being attached to people who are moving and they're kind of going in a direction, that's a great way of creating meaning in your life. You don't have to make it yourself. but you can offer something. And I've always been a proactive person. Like I've always put stuff on and organized events, and just it's like the weird way that my brain is wired. So so I'm just a curious person, and I've never been anywhere near an academically trained musician. I've never studied anything in the music industry. I've studied other things that have some crossover. It's not really about the things that I've studied or my background. It's more about my inquisitiveness and my curiosity to learn more. And that's lucky, right? Like there's a certain amount of luck. There's a lot of really talented artists that'll throw their hat in the ring and nothing really kind of happens for them. And at some point they have to face reality, and certain other things take over. Like you've got to get a job, pay bills, whatever. Those things aren't things that you commit to because you've given up on the other thing. It's just that you commit to those things, and slowly those other things don't take as much of a prominence in your life. Well, I've been really lucky that at different times my timing's been good, and I've been able to continue my music stuff. And I've had enough of an audience that continuously justifies keeping on doing it. And I've also had to sacrifice a lot during my life. Like I've watched a lot of my other friends just gradually climb up a ladder in their lines of work. And as an artist, and even as a business owner like myself, yeah, sure, we've got the opportunity to kind of like create our own ladder. And the beautiful thing is I have equity in my business, so I can really make decisions on where we go and how we go about it. So I do have options, and I really appreciate that. But I've watched my other friends kind of like just take a step outside of the music industry and go into, engineering or coding, or they work in kind of like, they work in software. Like there's just different directions that people have gone in, and I watch them continuously become more and more successful in that kind of area. Music is not an area where traditionally a lot of people are successful. It's just that we see images of it, and we really kind of like create this kind of glamorous lifestyle and career trajectory that is unrealistic for 99% of the people that are getting involved in it. That's one thing that I think is really important, is to be more honest about that. 99% of people who get involved in music are never even going to put a record out. And then you go down like a few percent of people who will make a living for a few years, but not for a life. So I've sort of seen the way that other people can have options that perhaps I haven't been able to, because I've fully committed to music, either in the business or the artist side of things. But when you talk about being multi-talented, I don't know, man. I don't necessarily agree with that. I would just say that I'm curious to learn. So like being a manager, I manage 4 acts at the moment, 5 acts maybe, 4 acts, and I mentor a lot of others. And you just bring your own experience to the table and try and continuously be honest with yourself and accountable to yourself to learn. So that you're not just kind of like becoming lazy and becoming settled in your ways. Like me as an older person, I have to continuously challenge myself not to be stuck in my ways. Like being really, excited about new school hip hop, even if it doesn't make up all of my playlists. I don't want to become kind of stale and bored. I want to understand what makes people tick. That forces me to go outside of my comfort zone. So whilst I've got that mentality of going outside of my comfort zone, even as I get older, that makes me learn more things. So that makes me kind of like acquire new skills or whatever. But the reality is when you do multiple things, there's only so much of yourself that you can sort of share around, right? So no matter who tells you that they're a genius, they've got great numbers, they can do everything, you take a little bit from here. I'm trying to do it for the camera. Take something from here, you might be able to gain something from here. But if you take from here, you've got to like, if you gain something from here, it takes away from something here. Like, that thing about that having a full cup. You can't keep putting stuff into that full cup. It just tips over. So what goes over? Well, you're going to have to make those calls. There's not really that many people that are just awesome at everything. It's just this myth. We continuously compare ourselves to everyone because that's just human nature. It's also the thing that is a massive cause of mental illness, is this continual kind of sense of comparisons. Everything is not that good because look at that other person that does it better. The answer is never in the other person. The answer is always in here, right? But if I do a number of different things, the reason why that works is because the people that I work with around me. So it's not about me. It's about like having relationships and being able to trust other people and collaborate kind of effectively. So whenever anyone kind of takes all the credit, yeah, they're just masking the fact that a whole bunch of other people have helped them along the way. And I've got pretty good teams around me, whether they be musically, like every single record I've made, like there's only a handful of songs that I've produced myself. Almost all of them are produced by somebody else. That means 50% of every song that I've done has usually been someone else. It's got my name on it. Doesn't mean it's me. You got to share. If you want to gain, you got to share. The other thing about kind of the more I experience as like a leader in our business, the more I understand the skills required for that are not like some sort of egotistical foundation that is just unbreakable and ambitious. Actually, you got to learn how to be like understand your staff and work with your staff and celebrate your staff. And that takes a lot of like free mental energy, because if your cup's full and you're trying to work out how to get the best out of the people that you're working with, and I don't want to give any impression that I do always get the best out of it, because I'm learning this stuff all the time. But you know, you have to learn that. That's where the real humility comes in. Like everyone wants to sort of talk about being a CEO. I love this. Every young person who wants to start a label wants to be a CEO. I love it. It's cute. But that's all it is. It's cute. Like the hard work is not in the shiny, I'm a CEO. The hard work is learning how to humble yourself in front of the people that you work around so that you show their value and that they can commit to the cause that you feel passionate about. That ain't no like glittery freaking gram posts about how much you're killing it. And that's cool. Like I'm not hating on that at all. I do it myself. But the answer's not in that. The answer's not in the kind of glorification of the self. But, you know, by the same token, I have always been really like massively impressed by the fact that huge movements and huge kind of like positive impacts in the community can really come down to a single individual that actually sees the potential, and the single individual brings people with them. So there is actually a real power to the individual, but those people, if they're really successful, probably not sitting there like patting themselves on the back. They're probably letting other people give the praise rather than themselves, you know? You make a lot, you praise yourself a lot so that people are aware of it. You know, maybe it kind of works on a superficial level, but the real praise, that's like the difference between a marketing campaign and word of mouth. Word of mouth is always going to have like an unquestionable power about it. A marketing campaign, it's going to come down to you know, how smart the advertising is, how much advertising you do, like all those other things. Word of mouth, nothing better.
That's very true. So it's almost as if you're saying that the image that's being projected as a modern artist is flashy and it's very glorified, and often they take credit and not recognize or show respect and recognition for the teams and all the effort that's been put around them. So synergy sounds very important.
I guess I was sort of talking more in the business side of things, like leading it than the artist, but I think that the same is relevant for the artist. Like, you know, you can survive by yourself as an artist for quite a while, but the journey of the artist, like if you have longevity, you're going to experience it all. You can't just be presenting everything as being perfect, you know, because at some point you break. And there's a roller coaster nature of trying to be an artist, and there's not a lot of money in it. If you want money, like seriously, if you want money and that's your idea of success in life, but you want to be an artist, because either instinctively and inherently you have to create, like you have to make that art. Like something inside you is most fulfilled when you create, right? That's beautiful. That's different to being successful, right? But that's like a compelling need. But if it's money that you want and you want to show people that you're really successful, why the fuck are you going in music? Go into you know, go into like finance, or in Australia, go into real estate. Like, that's where money is.
Sup? I want to welcome you to my crazy world. Hey, yo, it started like a voice trailing up in the distance, like I stumbled over someone else's fate and switched them. Nothing much going on, I may as well risk it all. On a career, probably blink and miss it all. Wasn't trying to wait around on no industry call, settle wherever chips fall, I just wanted to pick the ball up, find a crew and we'd lift the salt up. See how far we could take the dream. If we could plant the seeds, what could we make it mean? Going to cities I've never been, people I kinda know, like you did when you're doing the door of your own show. Every door led to another, that led to another. From the start of autumn through to the February summer, we on the come up. None of it was chasing a number, just put it down enough to never go under. But underneath the immense skies, I was uncertain at times what I'd led into the present part of my mind. If I'm lost, you should understand, I'm just heading wherever my arrow lands.
Okay, so the thing that I always say to young artists is get a job. Make the process of being an artist, and if you're going to be successful, because in a lot of ways there's a lot of talented artists that aren't successful, not because they're not talented. That's a big difference. It's like, look at the Triple J1 Hottest 100 on the weekend. How many artists that are doing phenomenal things were not in that 200? Yet a lot of artists kind of get multiple places because their popularity is with the voting public. What about Young and Lips? What about BYs? What about TK Mozer? What about Hefs? All these artists that are blowing the fuck up. They're way bigger than a lot of those artists. But that's someone's version of success. Well, if you're not on there, you're still successful, right? Allow that success to take place in its own fashion. Don't force it. If you've got a job, you can pay rent. You can continue to do the things that you need to live. In the meantime, if you really dream big and you believe in it, you can continue to do that thing that you really love doing without putting the pressure on that thing having to turn a buck. And if you want that thing to turn a buck, but the audience isn't there, you don't have the choice. That choice is being taken from you. So what's the point of investing in something that is beyond your control? The best way is to not put all of your eggs in that one basket. Just have that job and celebrate that job, and know that that job, as crap as it is or as good as it is your ticket to do the thing that you love. There's nothing bad that can happen. Because if time reveals that being an artist is too much, and fair enough, it's an understandable place to get to, then so be it. But if you have the ability to not just completely be one-track minded about this has to be everything, you're still doing that thing and your career is still progressing, it's still moving into a positive direction, well, you know, you buying yourself time, and time is everything. Time is absolutely everything when it comes to being an artist. I mean, if you can kind of write a song and you enjoy writing music and you've got time, and obviously you need focus, but all of the hard work is default. Like basically everything when it comes to music and creativity, the default is that you're going to work hard, right? It's not like, oh, you know, if all of these different variables happen, then I can maybe just rely on my talent. Well, no, there's talented people, there's not so talented people, there's people, it's like a spectrum, right? We all sit on different spots. It's like maybe a phenomenally talented person up here, and then up here is someone who does, it's real struggle, but they're determined. That's where the playing course becomes even, is that the determination of that person that may not have as much talent starts to match the person with heaps of talent, because this person has the determination. So, you know, like that, I know that it's sort of a bit of a boring thing to be told, but I really encourage young people and kind of anyone who really believes in art and taking that as something that they do in their lives. I think, like, don't talk about jobs as being a negative. Don't talk about it as being a compromise. Don't talk about it as being short term. Kill that noise. Celebrate it. Do the job just like any regular person has to do it. Like, we as artists, we sell ourselves short when we start to treat ourselves as like some special people. Nah, We're not. We're just bricklayers. We're just bloody receptionists. We're cooks. We're whatever. It's just a job. And we are like uniquely gifted to be able to do that job, but stop putting yourself up on this mantle. Just do the job, be honest about it, and give yourself the best chance at having longevity at it.
Wow, you're dropping wisdom left, right, and center.
Yeah, I mean, I partly come to these conclusions because I think it's actually a lot harder and a lot more challenging emerging as an artist in this current climate than it was when I was coming up.
I mean, it's definitely more saturated. Everyone's got phones, laptops. It's a lot easier to access music making software, and therefore there's definitely a saturation. Like there's so many artists out there, and it's so easy to get overlooked, and you know, it's very popular. It's a very popular thing. I mean, I'm not going to put up my hand and say I'm the best and I think that I'm better than everyone else. I've got a lot to learn. I mean, in the beginning, I definitely thought that. I was like, yeah, doing music. I'm an artist. You know, I pumped myself up. Even thought that I was, you know, a cut above people because I'm doing a couple of jobs and being an artist. But it quickly worked out that majority of artists have their own job. And like you said before, and I'm glad you said it, celebrate that job. And as Randy has said from the street uni, it allows you to fund your hobby and fund music. And it's not a bad thing at all to have a job. So that's really refreshing to hear. So thank you for that.
It's a good thing to be able to kind of like have part of your mind accepting that it's a hobby, but the other part quietly going, nah, I want to turn this into a thing. Like you never aim low. All of this stuff, like get a job or that's never aiming low. Never. You've got to aim high. In fact, if you want to really be an artist, quit comparing yourself to the person around the corner. You have to be trying to create art that is great, because the chances are you won't achieve that greatness. But if you don't start with that mentality, so there's a massive distinction between like treating it like a hobby by taking your job seriously, but not kind of like not taking your art seriously. I would never say that. I'd say take your art so seriously. But yeah, like getting back to your point about the saturation, if you think about real estate, because you're in real estate.
Correct, yeah.
Supply and demand is a basic concept, right? If you have too much demand and there's not enough supply, prices go up.
Yes.
If there's too much supply and not enough demand, prices go down. In music, what we have is a real wide access point now where everyone can get in, like you said. But at the same time, whilst we have phones, iPads, laptops, smart this, that, and the other, we don't have any more hours in the day. So whilst we're glued to our phones and we're scrolling and we're watching streaming services and we're streaming music, all of those things, they're competing with each other. Like our time is being shared within like Netflix. So Spotify has to compete with Netflix. So the problem is that where the supply has gone so much up, the demand has sort of has gone up, but not anywhere near the kind of levels that the supply has gone up. So the supply has gone up here, and now this is where we are as artists with the demand.
Yes.
So, you know, back when I was coming up, it was probably a little bit more even, you know, like there was more supply than there was demand, but not anywhere near what it is now. Accept that, because being angry at it doesn't change it. But I think it helps create more like a sense of realisticness around like, can I really succeed off this? Do I want to put my eggs into a basket where the odds of me becoming a successful artist is so small that what I'm actually doing is being delusional? Cool, be delusional, because you know, you're allowed to. It's your life, and that sometimes great outcomes come from that delusional self-belief. So I'm not saying that that can't work, but the odds are so small. So if you want to create drama later on in life, when you know you have to come face to face with the fact that you've kind of been kidding yourself this whole time about the prospects of what you're doing, cool. But you're going to have to deal with it at some point. I think it's better to go in with it going, no, actually, there's actually sweet FA chance of me becoming a successful musician in this climate. That makes, I'll get this job. That's actually a smart play. That's smart. Like that's like
that's a good
sense.
chess move. Yeah.
As opposed to, I was the best musician in school. I'm destined for this. No, like don't put that pressure on your shoulders, because all you're doing is creating an uneven contest. Like it's a mismatch, and like you got to. Music's already hard enough. Don't make a mismatch. Be realistic. Back yourself. All that kind of thing. But don't pretend like this is something that it's not.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, agreed wholeheartedly. It's something that isn't often talked about. It's just something that people kind of perceive, and their perception versus reality is a big gap. So yeah, it's been interesting to learn, that's for sure. To your management side,
Yeah.
you are currently managing Hermitude, is that correct?
Yep.
How did that?
Yep. Hermitude. I managed Hermitude. Oh, sorry. After you.
Oh no, you're right. I was just going to ask, how did that come about, and what kind of artists or other groups are you currently managing, if you wish to say?
I manage Horror Show as well.
Nice.
I've known Hermitude since I started. They were in my first band, and
Nice.
soon after we kind of disbanded because it was a band featuring some school friends, and then we met Hermitude and Gusto from Hermitude's sister, who's a bass player, and we had a DJ called DJ LF, a Vietnamese guy from Sydney who wasn't from the mountains at all.
Was this the first group, Explanatory?
Explanatory, yeah.
Nice, nice.
So I've always kind of looked after them, but it was probably in the late 2000s that I started taking seriously the management.
Yep.
I also managed this young producer called Finbar Stewart, who's an absolute weapon.
He is a weapon. I went to school with him. We were in the same year, actually. He's
true,
awesome.
in the mountains.
Yeah, Springwood High. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, cool. And then I managed this young rapper from Brizzy called Caleb, who's just, he doesn't have the awareness out there yet, but as far as an MC goes, like there's very few who can touch him here in this country. But he hasn't really kind of had his moments yet. They're all coming. He's barely 20, so he's got time ahead of him. But the management was like another classic thing in this industry where I'm just like I'm a bit more of an organizer. So I naturally sort of gravitated to becoming like the person who would answer the phones and who would, take the responsibility on around the artists. So but I've definitely learned a lot along the way. Once again, man, it's all good and well to kind of have the shiny tag and be like, I'm a manager of this act or that act, and I've got all this clout because they've got success. But actually the reality is that you're serving them. That's the dynamic. The artist and the manager, sure, the manager might have more clout, or they may have more industry sort of, reputation or whatever. But really, the dynamic is that the manager works for the artist. So as long as I'm serving the artist and really putting them first, I'm doing my job. And being organized and kind of like being able to fulfill what they want and facilitate their needs, that kind of thing. So yeah, management's, it's a slog, but it's it's really rewarding too.
I imagine there's a lot to it. As you said, you've got organizing. There is a whole lot of music business aspects that go on behind an artist and behind a group. And here at the Street Uni, they try to teach us the realistic reality of the music industry and how you go about it and what it's about, instead of throwing up your hand and saying you want to be an artist. Well, what is an artist? What do they do? What do they need? Who do they work for? And relating to Elephant Tracks as an independent label, for our viewers trying to learn and understand the music industry, what are some main differences between an independent label like yours versus a major label like Sony, for example?
Well,
Big question.
I mean, I haven't worked at the majors, so I'm not in a position to talk about the differences.
Yep.
I can sort of talk more broad strokes about it. You know, we're a smaller team. We have more care and attention for our artists. We are generally more passionate, I would say. Like, we don't just sign an artist and the rest of the team's like, oh, we signed that artist. We'll generally have dialogue between the whole team before we sign. Now, you can't do that in a major label. Like, they've got different departments. So we're closer to the ground. There's no doubt about it. We have quite often gravitated towards more artist-based staff anyway. I mean, the very premise of the label is that we're an artist-run label. So a lot of the artists within the team have experience and ongoing experience, what it's like recording, touring, trying to survive as an artist. So hopefully that crosses over. I find that gap between the salaried business worker, the label or the industry team, and the artist who is living hand to mouth or has none of the securities that come with a full-time job, that's a massive gap. And a lot of industry people don't understand it. Like, you don't understand what it's like not having superannuation coming in every month. You don't understand what it's like not having any holiday pay. You don't understand what it's like being sick and having a sick day. If you've got a gig and you're interstate and you're sick, you cancel that gig, it fucks up a huge amount of things. You don't just take a sick day as an artist. So there's a huge gap, I reckon, that kind of exists between artists and people who are in positions of more secure financial stability. Now, I was saying that you can't run a business like ours without having people on salaries. So I acknowledge that there's a point where you, in order to do the job, we can't be like, hey, everyone, you want to work on commission? But I do think that's one of the keys to us in the way that we work. So I think that, there's a lot of benefits from that passion that you bring to the artist's career, and we want to do it in a really professional manner. That's on us to learn and continue to get better at our job, and we're never going to be great at it all the time, but we aspire to it. Major labels, there's more financing, there's more of an ability to kind of like, make the artists get swept up in the idea that more money means it's a bigger validation of their career. And for some artists, that really works. For a lot of those artists, if it doesn't work, you've definitely signed your contract. You're locked into that contract. And if the interest of the label wanes in what you do, it's a lot harder to get out of that situation. That's why you have so many jaded stories about artists and labels. For the most part, that's a major label thing. But indie labels are just as dodgy as any major label, depending on the people who are running it. I would never sit here and say, oh, independent labels are ethically better than major labels, because we're all human, and humans are just as likely to kind of like make some sort of like unsavory decision if they're in a major situation or an indie. So I don't think being indie makes you more ethically sound. I think that everybody has a moral responsibility to be ethical in the way that they do business, but a lot of business doesn't run like that. A lot of business worships the dollar and the profit margin, and everything else is secondary. For us, that's definitely not how we operate. The last thing I would say is that the deals that we do are much more artist friendly in the long run. So we have higher royalty rates. Our deals are much more friendly to the majors. So whilst the major might offer more money up front and be able to kind of like, if you want to become that fast lane artist, the major label is going to be better equipped to support that vision. Just hope that they stay enthusiastic and hope that you keep selling heaps of units. Now, most artists, if you're lucky enough to be successful for a long period of time, that's really good. It's very rare. So if you're a young artist and your idea is I want to go to majors because there's more money, just know that you're walking a tightrope. It's cool. Do it. Back yourself. Every artist does, because every artist is the special one, right? We're all the special one. Fair enough, because you kind of need that belief in yourself to kind of do the things that we do. I don't hate on it, even though I'm giving it quotation marks, but it's something that's really common. We all kind of think, oh, maybe we're the special ones. Maybe we'll be scouted from this gig and be thrown up into international stages. Nah, it's not going to happen. But I also like, don't let go of that kind of like little bit of hope. The reality is that like, if you are on those major label deals, the royalty returns are much smaller. So yes, you're getting more money, you're getting less money out of the profits. They're just like banks. They give you a whole bunch of money, but instead of banks where you pay it back, it's yours. The label owns it for the duration of the term. So they'll continue to keep paying you this little percentage of the profits. But that's the whole thing. Once they go into profits, they're killing it. The majors are killing it. You as the artist, not so much. There's so many, like all the contracts that are written up by majors, they have legal departments. They got lawyers on deck. You as the artist, you got to pay for that lawyer. You got to pay for their hours every single time. The odds are stacked against you massively. But to a certain extent, like in the indie label, the odds are stacked against you too, because the indie label they're the ones who have designed a contract. They're giving you the contract that is their terms. So then you've got to go to your lawyer and get the terms sort of like smashed back, hopefully into your favor a little bit. The indie label probably doesn't have a legal department. So the odds are always massively in favor of the major and you as the artist. Doesn't matter if your manager is like negotiated a big advance or whatever, that money will run out. So just knowing that as a young artist, especially a talented one that actually has people knocking on your door, which is rare, just know that that door that you're walking through is like, the odds are already way out of your league, you know, but that's okay. You've got to take those gambles, but just know that.
Yeah.
Because it's a good sort of mindset. Don't trust any of them. Like even if you have an advocate at these major labels, like an A&R, fully loves you, came to all the gigs, is committed to you, believes in you, loves the vision, you've got a really good rapport with them. What happens when that person goes and moves to another job and you're left with whoever they employ and that person inherits you? They didn't sign you. They don't really necessarily care, but you're their responsibility now. But as much as they try and put on a bright, smiley face, they really don't care about your music. If that happens, good luck. Because really, you can't change that. And that's the circumstances of the major for the most part, is that sometimes you're going to find yourself in that situation. And just know that's part of the gamble that you took in signing with them.
Yeah, I've been being armed with knowledge and information is half the battle. And I think that's, like you said before, that's how a lot of jaded artists and horror stories come out, because people aren't armed with the right info. It's very common.
I mean, think about it, like these are big businesses that are used to making money, and the whole kind of point of capitalism is that one person exploits another person and makes a buck out of it. Like, get to the bottom of it, that's kind of it. So major record labels are corporations that are there to return money to their shareholders. Like, the terms of the deal are on the packet. You can see it.
Yeah.
I mean, but by the same token, like an indie label wants to make money too. So they just may not be as sophisticated as the major label in being able to extract whatever value is from that artist. But as the artist, you're just a little person here against the monolith of the major corporation. Once again, I'm not saying don't throw your hat in the ring and don't give it a crack, because you as the artist, you want to back your vision, whatever. But that's the environment you walk into, to be clear about it.
I'm left sitting here staring into a beer.
Where do you see Oz music kind of going in the near future? It's a big question.
Well, I see a lot of catch-up happening. You know, like I was talking to you about Hottest 100, before in this conversation, it's pretty fascinating seeing that dynamic at play. Like, we can all see YouTube and we can all see the impact that a number of artists have had in the last few years, and the breakout artists who have really paved the way. Yet we haven't seen that translate into, say, having that influence over formats like Triple J. So what that says to me is that 1-4 or Hefs or Young and Lips or these artists, that they mean a lot to kids, and not to kids like adults, but what I mean is like young people. They mean something that really kind of captured the imagination. What it looks like to me is like other parts of the industry that people have looked at as the conventional Bibles, which is the hottest 100. Like, it's seen as like the biggest poll in the world. Therefore, it's the most representative sort of picture, snapshot of what's popular here. But if they're missing, like if all of these artists have gone missing in their massive poll, to me that says the industry convention of that being the Bible is not as relevant anymore, because if they're not capturing all of those kids that love these artists, yet the same kind of demographic of artists are appearing in the hottest 100, that says to me there's a failure of the industry to keep up with where the culture's headed. So there's a lot of like, there's a lot of exciting directions where the culture is being taken, and the ability for artists to have their own niche audiences across TikTok or across, different social media formats, or even if it be like, really sort of instilling a sense of pride in local areas that have traditionally been neglected. These things are changing the very way that we kind of are seeing what is Australian art, or what is art from this country. Who are the people that are the ambassadors, so to speak, like the big flag wavers? Like Kid Leroy has done bigger things than any artist in Australia has done for 30 years. And it's crazy to think that, like, all of the massive artists, whether they be Powderfinger or the Hoods or Flume or Kylie Minogue. Kylie Minogue's probably the last one who had that truly international mega impact, or Savage Garden. Like, there's a few of them, right? Silverchair. And Kid Leroy's still so young. Like, he's only done a little bit. So, I mean, I don't really want to compare him to people who have had like 10 albums. But the impact that he's had is actually on that level. And so, what is happening is that, I think a lot of the gatekeepers are showing that their number one challenge is working out how to be representative of what's actually happening on the ground. And I think that format that has culture, that kind of monetizes culture, or has culture at the heart of whatever that business is. Like Triple J, I don't know whether you'd say it monetizes culture, but it definitely, like, as the Australian broadcaster, it either lives or dies by its relevance. But even the Spotify's or Apple Music's or whatever the format be that the art gets sort of carried by, TikTok, if you can't reach those audiences, you shouldn't be in the job. So as far as like where the art's going or what music's doing, I mean, things are moving so quickly now. I'm more of a fascinated observer rather than a forecaster. I mean, that the only area that sort of blows everything out of the water is where art and, like, Web3 kind of intersect, and the relevance of music as NFTs, and how our consumption patterns change. Like, that's like a whole nother question, and how that affects art. And I swear to God, we do not have enough time to talk about all the implications of that. But I'm also, my job as a manager, I've got to be across this stuff. I've got to understand slightly what's happening there. But it's way too early to really fully comprehend what that's going to mean for culture itself. So,
Yeah, that it's definitely tricky. I can definitely see how Web 3.0 metaverse NFTs are definitely going to be a big game changer. And it's going to be interesting how we adapt, as you're saying, with our different consumption patterns. Like even virtual concerts and having an NFT that translates into a ticket that translates into an album. Like that's incredible. So yeah, excited to see that. That's for sure.
I think COVID's taught us a lot about how quickly our whole lives can change as far as what keeps us happy. Like I don't know many people who advocate for going completely online, but you don't have to advocate for that to sort of see that we're going further in that direction.
Definitely.
So what does that mean? Like, okay, so we all sit in these goddamn Zoom sessions and slowly our brains are frying, just like, I'm over it. But what happens when your recreational life is actually sitting in a room, but it's virtual with all of your friends, but you're all there and it feels like you're there, and you're not looking at a screen in order to see the other people, but you're actually just like, you can look outside of your eye and see the person next to you. Like the way that weaves its way into our natural life, where we actually get a genuine sense of like a social engagement, not a forced one, then things will really change. I think that's a way off though.
Yeah, it's definitely going that way, but it's going to take some time, that's for sure. Thank you so much for your time today, Urthboy. We appreciate it. You guys can catch Urthboy. His IG is all lowercase URTHBOY. On his website, urthboy.com, for his merch and his latest release, Jangle Bells, and same handle for Facebook as well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And to people who do check it, I generally try. I mean, I don't see the role that I have in music as being like just for the people that I am in, working terms with, like we're partnerships. I see the role that I have as being lucky to kind of have a career in this, and so therefore I'm fascinated by the culture wherever it's taking place. And so young artists, I would never say don't hit me up with a question or to find some time to chat potentially. I am here to not be a closed door. Same time, I'm busy, so there will be people who hit me up and I don't get back to them straight away, but I will be responsive, especially if you kind of follow it up and show that you really care about the question that you're asking. So I really want to make that clear to people who are watching that we're all part of the same thing. So if I can help in a way that doesn't require like 40 hours a week from myself, I'd be more than happy to answer questions if I know the answer.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, you heard it first, guys. If you want to ask Urthboy any questions, meaningful questions, he's a busy man, he may be able to get back to you.
Definitely.
Fantastic. Thank you so much again, Tim. We appreciate it.